Good day and welcome to the dining room table. New York City Mayor Eric Adams is answering questions from the press regarding new shelters. Please subscribe, like, and share. So, the migrant crisis in New York City has exploded. And I say also for the homeless shelters because people at post COVID, people are losing their homes to eviction, to foreclosure, unfortunately. So, there's going to be more people who are looking for shelter from New York City on top of um, the migrant crisis. And then you have a housing issue in New York City where, people are not finding housing and people are not being able to move from shelter to housing because there isn't there isn't housing out there, or available housing out there, or affordable housing out there. So here, in New York City, they look through all city property to see what can they use as temporary shelters. Of course, this is an immigration issue. This is a federal issue because if they keep on finding real estate and opening up these shelters, uh, you still have the issue of more people being bused and needing more. So they're going to continue having to find real estate to house the homeless and the migrants. So you have New York City looking at all the different property that the state owns, that the federal owns. You have the governor and her team looking at, pointing what properties the city can use, and how the federal government can help. And the federal government is saying, look at the city properties, look at the state properties. And then when they're asking for properties, if they're getting them, now you have to talk about who's going to pay for this and the services that goes with it. You they While they're looking at these properties, they also have to look at the environmental. If these properties were closed, what were the reasons why they were closed? Are the mechanicals okay? Is the air quality okay? They're taking a lot of these and they're just going to put cots in them and fill them up. Now, people in communities are upset and making noise, um, in order to stop this, and it should be helping the mayor get his voice and his message heard on a federal level. Once the smaller communities are seeing that these shelters are opening up in their communities and they're not happy about it, and they're protesting, and they're going to they're going to the court. But on a national level, the federal government really is not talking about this. I watched the press conferences, the White House press briefing, and I kind of wonder if the Biden administration is even, or President Biden himself is even aware that this is happening in New York City. No mention of what's happening in New York City, and there are many other states that's happening to. That this is happening to, but you don't hear about it within the press briefings. You don't hear questions. So the mayor is saying here, listen, I'm going to do what I got to do because we have an obligation um, to house, to give a bed and a pillow to anyone who comes to us homeless and need one for the night or for however long. Although they started 60-day evictions from the time they come into the shelter, they are given 60-day eviction notices to find where they want to go. Maybe they want to relocate. Maybe they want to go back to their country. Maybe they have family somewhere else. But let's hear from the mayor and see how he is selecting his real estate. New York City is in need of real estate for the shelters.
Okay, you said you were going to look at them, but the governor is opposed to many of those sites because they're upstate, they're not in New York City.
Right.
How are you going to rectify or get everybody together? And if you decide that you like,
So what the report is basically saying is that the city has identified properties that the state may have that they may want to use, and the state is saying allegedly they can't use those properties. So like I said, everyone between the city, the state, and the federal are throwing around different real estate buildings that can be used in New York City, and then they're saying, well, no, it can't be, or the community is saying, no, we don't want to hear, or it's environmentally, it can't work, it's flooding over there, it's too far from anything else, maybe it's too close to a school, or there's not enough resources in that facility.
Some of the 11 sites that the federal government has proposed. How are you going to get the governor to accept that, given the fact that you totally disagree with this whole idea?
Well, the sites that we got that were on state facilities, we could not go to the president and say, can you give us authorization to use a state site? So sites that are under federal control, we can't go to the governor and say, can you give us right to use those sites? So the federal government controls their sites, the state controls their site, and the city controls their site. So the federal government tells us we can use this site, we're going to listen to what the federal government states.
In responding to the letter from Secretary Mayorkas, said she was opposed to letting the city use those 11 sites because she wanted all of the migrants to be in New York City and not to go beyond the 5 boroughs. Mm-hmm. So are you saying that if there are federal sites that they make available beyond the 5 boroughs, that you will send migrants there even if she doesn't want them?
So the Homeland Security is alleged to have sent a letter to the mayor. I have not seen the letter. Once I get it, I will cover it here. That they are opposed to some of the sites that New York City has suggested because they are outside of New York City, and the migrants, the asylum seekers, they're in New York City. You leave them in New York City because the other counties, the other leaders don't want migrants there. They don't want people who are unemployed there. They say they need the resources and the money for them, for the residents who are already there. So the reporter is saying, are you going to send them anyway? Because if you don't have the space, where are you gonna put them?
We don't have an option. New York City has run out of room. And think about it for a moment. Think about a plan that states all of the migrants must stay in New York City. We're close to 60,000 that are still in our care, 10,000 a month. So any plan that wants that state.
We're going to cover that bill, because that 60,000 migrants, that does not include the homeless. There's a cost. There's a cost for, meals, toiletries, bedding, security, the lease, the real estate. There's a cost for all of that, and someone is paying for it.
All migrants must stay in New York City. That's a failed plan. Any plan that does not include stopping the flow at the border is a failed plan. And so if the national...
So Mayor Eric Adams is saying, listen, we can't keep all these migrants here, and we're getting more coming in here. We can't afford, because our homeless shelter is already at capacity, clearly, because we need to get other shelters. And also the border, the immigration issue, that they're coming in. So as we're placing them, they're more and more coming in. So we're not solving the situation. We're not stopping the bleeding. It's still happening.
Leaders are saying we're not going to stop the flow. That's a failed plan. And if the state leaders are saying it must stay in New York City, that's a failed plan. And it's just not fair to New York City residents. We have 0.05 of the landmass, but we have 99.9% of the migrant asylum seekers.
Sites prove to be okay, and the federal government says to you, you can use Fort Drum or Fort whatever upstate. Are you going to do it even though the governor opposes it?
We are going to use any space that's available to take the pressure off of New York City residents. Whatever space we could use within the authorizing power, we're going to use. If I get permission from the governor to use a state facility, we're going to use that. If I get permission from the federal government, we're going to use that. We're going to use any space that folks are coming and say you have the authorization to use. Okay.
So there you have it. As long as he is authorized to use a space, he needs a space, he's going to use it. That's conflict with community residents. They're making noise where they are when it comes to their communities. But he's saying that if the state says gives him permission to use a facility, if the federal government gives them permission to use a facility, and they need the facility for 60,000 migrants plus on top of it the homeless in New York City, he is going to use that space. Please subscribe, like, and share, and more to come.